Good evening, everyone, and welcome for your patience. Welcome to the regular council meeting for Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. We respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather and work is on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. There are no introduction or approval of late items. If I can please get a motion to approve the April 2nd agenda. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on the agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We have no delegations this evening, so I will get a motion to approve the March 19th meeting minutes. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on the regular council meeting minutes for March 19th? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We have the Nautical Days Festival Committee meeting minutes for Wednesday, February 26th to be received. Sorry. That's been moved and seconded for receipt. Any questions or comments on those Nautical Days meeting minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We have the consent agenda on page 12. There are 8 items there. If I can get a motion to receive the 8 items. That's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of receipt? Opposed? And those items are all received. Are there any items that council would like to pull out? You'll just need to have a seconder and then we will discuss. Councillor Mayer.
I just wanted to pull out item 8, which is the submission from the Comox Food Policy Council with the food policy framework for the OCP.
I'll second. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's just a question to staff. There are some really interesting policy recommendations in this document, and I'm just wondering how they would be considered for the OCP, like how staff will use this document, or if there are any additional steps that would be required to have some of the items considered for addition to the OCP.
Over to CEO Wall.
Yeah, thank you. So we take in all of the input that we're getting from the different groups. It's going into our consultants with Urban Systems. The Food Policy Council was extended an invite to our community well-being stakeholder engagement session yesterday. And so all of that data, all the recommendations sort of get collated and they'll come back for council review. And then we'll move from there as to what will be included in the OCP. The next time council's taking a look at your OCP is going to be on the next regular council meeting. Actually, I don't think we're going to get into the items contained within the Food Policy Council, but you're going to start to see the feedback and different proposals and conversations that we've been having with the community so far.
Fabulous. Thank you.
That looks like it wraps up that one. Councillor Blacklock.
Am I allowed to ask questions about the Food Policy Council or the Food Policy letter?
You can ask the question, then we'll determine.
Well, I'm just wondering, because in the documentation provided, particularly in the introduction, it talks about 6 dimensions of non-agricultural food policy, but then it only goes on to list 5. So I want to know what's the 6th missing dimension to food security?
I don't have the answer to that, but it's
Yeah, I can take that feedback back and I'll report back to you. It's a mystery item. Thanks for noting that.
Thanks. Thanks for the comment on that one. Are there any other items 1 through 8 that council would like to remove from the consent agenda? Okay, so we're moving on to unfinished business on page 51. We have the boundary extension application for the Torrance Road properties electoral approval, BE 23-1, that council accepts the proposal dated January 23rd, 2025 from the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs for the proposed boundary extension in the Knoll Avenue, Torrance Road, and King Road area for the following properties, and there's 3 listed there, and that the Town of Comox administration be authorized to proceed with an alternative approval process for electoral approval of boundary extension application in this area. Okay, Councillor Grant has moved it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Swift seconded. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Haslett.
Just seeing as how this is an AAP, moving forward for that, how does that work with the town and everything? I mean, there was a lot of negative feedback going around the AAP process, as well as there's not a lot of positive feedback with it. So I'm just curious on how this is going to move forward, and if this is a way that it is just to speed it up, or if it's a year out, or has this been something that's been worked on for quite a while?
I'll go through to CEO Wall for the question on the AAP process.
Yeah, I think that ultimately it's up to council to make a decision of when you feel the AAP process is applicable to be used in a way that you feel comfortable with. I can say in this instance, if we move towards assent voting and having to do a referendum on it, it becomes time consuming, becomes very expensive. I would say this is a very minor issue. I would not expect that the majority of the community would feel strongly about this one way or another. And I don't think you would get a lot of turnout or desire for turnout on something like this. It's a minor boundary expansion in an area of town that I would suspect most everybody believes is already within the town of Comox, with very sort of minimal impact. So, the AAP process was put in place to allow municipalities to move through some of these issues more seamlessly, and given how small this issue is, I think that it works well with the AAP, which is why we have it recommended, but ultimately it's up to council.
Thanks for that, Councillor Mayor.
This is also just a question for staff. I'm in support of this, but when I look at what is being lost when we do boundary expansions, one of the things that comes up is agricultural land. And I know that this wasn't used that way, but it is part of the zoning that is lost, that it could have been used for agricultural purposes. And so it's more of a curiosity that I have when we're talking about boundary expansions, and this might be a conversation to have around the official community plan, how we're offsetting those losses when agriculture is considered something that is an important kind of identity of the Comox Valley. It's really important for our food security as well. And then the other issue that has been coming up with the development around Hector and Aspen is the way we create buffers around rural properties when we're doing boundary expansions. And those things aren't covered here. And I don't think in this particular case it's detrimentally so. So again, I support it, but these are items that I would like us to capture perhaps in the OCP or to be aware of for other boundary expansion projects. So what would be my question? I guess my question would be, how will we consider items like this, or is this being considered in the OCP? Is this something that has been discussed in the past?
Or does CEO Wall with those 2 considerations?
Yeah, so when it comes to the potential loss of agriculturally productive land, it's not something that we considered on this property specifically. I think if we were so at the end of the OCP process, we're going to be looking at a boundary expansion strategy. And in that larger strategy, I think that's something that we would start to take into account, is where are we looking to expand and the type of uses we're going to have within it. Now, the communities of Comox and Courtenay are all slated to expand into the regional growth areas that are identified in the regional growth strategy for municipal expansion for the purpose of the provision of housing. It is not envisioned in the RGS that we're going to be expanding into areas in order to provide additional agricultural land. So in this case specifically, the intent for us to acquire it is to allow for the servicing, which will allow for a higher densification of residential development. Now, when we're getting into those other questions around additional buffering of developments that are abutting the rural areas, that is something that council would take a look at in both your OCP process as well as your zoning. We are in a process right now of moving away from zones, multiple zones with multiple different regulations, and instead we are looking to provide a type of zone that has I think the language that we used as we were going through the development review process is the largest sandbox we can with really high walls. So we're going to allow you to do everything within that sandbox, and doing anything outside of it becomes really difficult. And if we want to look into providing additional buffers in certain areas, that's going to be the creation of additional zones. So we have been going in the opposite direction of doing that. That's not to say it couldn't be done. And ultimately, it would be council to decide, are there certain areas where you want to have higher tree retention? Are there certain areas where you want to have higher buffers? But I think one of the other realities too is, as the community continues to develop and as we continue to expand our boundaries, what is rural now won't be in the future, and then you'll be left with those larger buffers and loss of developable land. And I don't say that as a negative. I'm just saying that's the trade-off council will have to make.
Any other questions from council? Okay, and so the motion is on the floor to have the town of Comox administration be authorized to proceed with the alternative approval process for electoral approval of a boundary extension application in the Knoll Avenue, Torrance Road, and King Road area for the above properties listed. All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We're on page 116. We have the Comox Affordable Housing Agreement Bylaw 2040, that the Comox Housing Agreement Bylaw number 2040 be given first, second, and third reading. And this is, of course, for the Guthrie property, moved by Councillor Grant and seconded by Councillor Hazlitt. Questions or comments on the housing agreement? Councillor Blacklock.
Just in the report on this, some of the numbers are using CMHC data from 2019, i.e. 5 years ago. So I was just wondering if there's more current data available, should that not be in the housing agreement, or is it going to be just left open-ended for dates to be written in?
Over to CEO Wall.
Yeah, all of the data where it's referencing certain years is flexible and will continue through as inflation and the numbers are updated.
Follow up, Councillor Blacklock.
And there's another section of this report, and sorry, I think it's on page 3, or talking about the $46,000 limit annual income. Does that, if we're talking about 10 rental apartments, so for a studio apartment, are we going to say that limit is 1 person or 2 or max 2 or 1? You understand? Like I'm just wondering how many. Is there any restriction to the number of people that can contribute to the $46,000 of income?
Maybe I'll pass that over to Robin. Are you able to answer?
Thanks. Thank you for the question. So for an eligible tenant means a household that can have cumulative annual income of the relevant income limit. And then household is defined also as a person or 2 or more persons related by blood, marriage, or adoption, or in marriage-like relationship, or a group not more than 3 persons.
Thank you.
Great, that answered the question, Councillor Blacklock. Any other questions on the housing agreement? Councillor Swift.
Thank you. I believe this has been in the report, but I can't find it. At one time, we were talking about reserving some of these units for certain groups like the fire fighters and I know veterans, but I think what we're better off to do is just leave it open to whoever is available, because I don't think if our fire hall, it goes ahead, that's going to be looked after, and I'm not sure we're in the best position to restrict it and be really cognizant of which groups are in greatest need. So I'd like it to just be an open application process.
Just over to staff, is that in there as a specific that's requirement for fire hall or military?
No, it's not. There's an alternative to the recommendation should council wish to move it. That would include firefighters as a priority tenant selection.
Perfect, thank you. So the motion as it is meeting that. Other questions from council on the housing agreement bylaw? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you to planning and CA Wall for having that agreement drafted for Guthrie. We have on page 168, the respectful workplace policy, that policy CCL 080.01, respectful workplace policy be adopted.
Moved. Second.
Has been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on the workplace policy? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to D, the Scott Mercer Inspector Comox Valley RCMP 2025 policing priorities. So the inspector came to our meeting in March and went over some of the updates and changes that the Comox Valley RCMP is going through, including the body worn cameras, different tasers that are coming. And what they would like from us is to hear what our annual 2025 priorities are. Just for an example of what we've talked about, speed and traffic continues to be a higher item, community safety, theft, things like that. So if we just want to have a general conversation about what we think our 2, 3, or 4 priorities would look like for 2025, we will get back to them. I'll get back to council with a draft of what that looks like after our discussion, and we'll forward that on. So comments from council on what you see from talking to residents. Councillor Grant.
Yeah, I think we've seen a bit of an uptick in their presence in our town since Inspector Mercer got here, and I'd just like to make sure that that continues, maybe even a little more. But I mean, honestly, seeing them around actually is a really good thing. So I'd like to see more of that.
Right, so presence and availability, just Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, I'll echo Councillor Grant's comments. I saw 3 officers in one of our local coffee shops one morning, so that was great to see them in town. I think, to me, I think we see a lot of concerns about traffic. So I think that would be I think higher on the priority list, just based on the number of letters and concerns that we hear about. And then the other, to me, and this would be no surprise to all of you around the table, given our conversations before, is just about keeping costs down. Given the increase, that I think that should be a priority. That I know they got new equipment they want to order and new members, and the escalation of the cost that's going to come when we have hit over 15,000. But just having that as a reminder to the inspector and their team that that's a real concern for us. Thanks.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's a very good point with the escalation we've seen in the last couple of years and years to come. Any other comments? Councillor Swift and then Councillor Mayer, please.
Thank you. Well, I'm not suggesting this is a problem, but I think the summer's coming and there's a lot of people that like to hang out at the Marina Park in the evening, and it would be nice if they made a point of swinging through it periodically just to see what was going on. I don't know that there's great damage being done, but I think a police presence there would be really useful every once in a while.
Perfect. Make a note of that under the presence. Councillor Mayer.
Yeah, for me, it's about wellness checks. I live in a neighborhood that has a household that seems to require some occasional wellness checks, and that is much appreciated from other folks in the neighborhood. And I remember in one of the presentations, there was discussion about kind of building out the wellness check team to include, it might have been a nurse or something like that, or somebody who could really tend to people's mental health. I just feel like it's probably a little bit more of an invisible service that happens in our community, but it's a very, very important one. So I'd like to see that continue.
So I have in kind of order of what it seemed to come up as important. We have the speed and traffic as number one. Number two, general presence and availability inside the town of Comox and at Comox Marina, which is kind of an area in the summer we want to highlight. Keeping policing costs down. Number three. Number four was community safety and just general disorder. I don't know if that's the right word, but we'll get that one down. And then the fifth one would just be the availability of wellness checks. Any kind of questions or comments around that? Otherwise, we'll get that in an email out to everyone to look at before we send to the RCMP. Okay, just checking with staff. Is there any motion that needs to be passed at this time for that? Or can we pass it in 2 weeks?
You can pass it in 2 weeks if you're
We'll
comfortable.
just get that in writing so that everyone's comfortable and has a bit more time to consider. Councillor Kerr.
Just a reflection. I mean, we're pretty lucky in this community that this is our list of concerns for our police department. So I just want to say I'm feeling very grateful today.
Very true. Councillor Blacklock.
You may want to add a note just with respect to the, it says here about the integrated mental health response units, i.e. a mental health nurse would accompany an officer on call outs for someone in mental distress. The province received funding to run something called a peer assisted care team, which is currently happening now in Courtenay. And that's born out of a feeling that if you're in a mental health crisis and with substances involved, there's a good chance that you don't feel comfortable calling the police for assistance. And so the province did fund this program that is operating now, just to remind them that you know, we don't want to duplicate the effort there. You know, that would be the only thing I would add.
Sure.
Is that program is now up and running. It's a contract program run by ABI.
Thank you for those comments. I put wellness check / pact because that is supposed to also be happening in Comox so that those things can tie together. Thank you for that comment. And we will move that to our next meeting for approval for a motion. So with no further comments, there are no special reports, no bylaw adoptions. And now we have under new business, the fire station replacement. And we are going to have a presentation now from Chief Schreiner. A quick presentation. So we'll just get that loaded and then you can have whatever time you need.
Good luck. But while Tammy's getting that up, thank you very much, Council, for allowing me to present this evening. I always enjoy speaking with you and telling you the fire story. So it looks like we're getting close here. I also know that you guys all had a chance to look at this. I thought there'd be a bunch of surprises in it, but you'll probably get no surprises tonight. So there we go. And look at that. I got the clicker to work on the first click. So history of the fire station. Your fire department's 83 years old. We've been in 3 different buildings in that time. 42 to 58, we were on Gladstone and Fairburn, which is where the dog park is now. Spent 16 years in there. I believe that was an old public works building or that type of building that the fire department repurposed. 58 to 78, 20 years across the street from there, which we call the old fire hall, which was removed last year. in Gladstone. And then 1978, we moved up to where we are now, and we've been there since for 47 years. Well, I got 4 bedrooms. Oh, footnote in there, when we opened that building, 1978 had 4 small bedrooms upstairs. The thought of council of the day was that we might have living firefighters in 1978 there. The bedrooms were 9 by 10 feet, so very, very small. We've saved one of them. There's still one of them in there. The other ones have been converted into a boardroom. But just to forward the thought that, 40, 50 years ago, we were thinking about maybe having firefighters live there. It just didn't work out at the time. We didn't have that many firefighters and so on. So why do we need to upgrade? Well, obviously the building's old. It's too small for our future or for our current and future needs. When we moved in there in 78, we had 22 volunteer firefighters, 1 full-time staff. Today we have 60 firefighters and 8 full-time staff. When we moved in there in 78, we did about 70 calls that year. Last year we did about 950 calls. So you can see the call volume has increased immensely. So we feel it's the right time to prepare for the next 40 years. We've been working on this project internally for about 4 or 5 years now. We've been throwing out ideas and having meetings from time to time to discuss what we thought our needs were going to be, both now and in the future, to try to come up with the right plan. One of the questions that came up is, are we in the right location? And so we looked around the community and thought, where would be a better spot for a fire hall? And really, quite frankly, we can't suggest a better spot. Certainly, that would be cost effective. There's not a lot of property located in a good position for us. We're on high ground, which fire departments like to be, so it avoids a few challenges. So we believe the site now is our best value, be our lowest cost to do something different there. We also believe we can save half the building, so the truck portion of the building we can keep and just repurpose the wood section of the building. We're in a central location, and we're also close to a lot of the proposed increases in density that we see on the agenda over the next little while. Further to that, we have a large training component behind the fire hall, which the firefighters built over the last 30 years. We have 4 additional buildings, and those would be expensive to move and cost even more. So we've done an assessment of the truck bays with engineering and their own staff. And we believe that facility would last for another 40 years. It was earthquake upgraded in the late 90s. It's a bit smaller than the current new fire station would be, but we think we can live with it. Mentioned here that we bought our largest truck about a year ago, and it fits in there. We bought that truck specifically to fit in the existing station, so we don't need to do an expansion there. And we don't anticipate expanding the fleet in the next 40 years. We'll need to replace the fleet over the course of the next 40 years, but we're not going to be adding more larger pieces of equipment. So the truck bays are fine. We have enough. We are proposing a few small changes in the truck bays. New roof. The roof on there is 30 years old. It's a torch-on roof. If the new roof were to be part of this project, we could also do solar panels on it. We may sprinkle it, depends on how the budget works out and so on. Concrete is falling apart in the front of the fire station. That's something we could look at also. Oops. Getting too aggressive with the clicker now. Most of you guys have been in the fire station. The office side of the station was built fairly cheaply. It's pretty inadequate. It's 1.5 stories and it's very inefficient. The main floor is 3,000 square feet. The second floor is 1,200 square feet. We currently have 3 offices for 8 staff. We have 1 shower in the building for 60 people, and that is really a pinch point. We had a fire this morning, and when the folks are getting back, we've got about a dozen people want to have a shower before they go home and take sit home to their families. And we had about 3 people lined up for the shower. By the time the 3rd person goes through, we're out of hot water anyhow. So we need to fix that portion. The kitchen is way too small. We prepare a lot of large meals between our own group and the youth programs we do. As I mentioned, we have 1 small bedroom in there right now. And the electrical service is far too small for a building of that size. When we want to add a new appliance, which we did last year, we added a new machine for cleaning our breathing apparatus. We had to disconnect one of the heaters in the station. So we only got half the heat in the truck base now. That just shows you some of the density. The kitchen is the top left corner there. So last night we actually had 14 people in there cooking. If you've been in that kitchen, it's pretty darn tight. It's about 8 feet by 15 feet. 4 people sharing the office in the middle here that you see. 1 fellow there kneeling down. So we're very crowded. So an upgrade, what would that look like? 3 full stories, as I mentioned, right now, we're a story and a half on that footprint. 3 stories on the same footprint, going from 4,200 square feet to about 10,000 square feet, 2.5 times larger. Addition of a kitchen over on the Frisbee golf side, but it would only encroach on a small grass area there, about 20 feet out from the side of the building. Still be on the fire hall property per se. And no trees would have to come down or anything. We'd end up with 8 offices in a new build instead of 3. In the short term, we think we need about 5 or 6 offices today. So we'll have a couple spare offices that we could maybe use as an RCMP community policing station, or they could stop by the fire station. They just had a discussion about more policing in town to do paperwork or check in, and same with BC Ambulance. We'd end up with 10 showers in this building. 5 would be in a residential setting upstairs, which we'll talk about, and 12 bathrooms. Currently, we have 3 bathrooms in the building for the 60 people. We'd end up with an additional classroom. We right now have a large classroom and a boardroom upstairs. We would have a second boardroom upstairs. So we do a lot of teaching. It's a training center, so to speak, at the fire hall too. Each of the boardrooms have what we call Murphy beds in them. Those are beds that fall out of the wall, so you can sleep an additional 4 people in this new build in time of emergency. So when we have events like the large snowstorms or things like that, we might add a few extra people to the station, knowing that it takes a lot longer to respond from home to the fire station to the emergencies we go to. We're also talking about up in the boardrooms to, this is an idea that came through from one of our volunteers, is to build a couple small little business centers in there. So some of our folks that are self-employed or work at home people can come to the fire station, take a workspace in one of the boardrooms, and have access to printers and internet and things like that, some coffee and so on. So we think that would be a really great thing to do, because we'll have people hanging out in the fire hall and not being paid to do so, but being available, which is really important for us. So upgrade, we're proposing 5 bedrooms residential on the 3rd floor. A lot more storage, including storage for EOC, Emergency Operations Center. So recently we've done some training up at the fire hall. Fire hall seems to be a great location for an Emergency Operations Center, but currently it's not well purposed for that, because what happens if we have a large emergency in town, the fire department will be very active, and we need that space for our firefighters. Growing the space into the 2nd and 3rd floor, we'll be able to move firefighters up to the boardrooms when they are having their time off in between going to calls and things like that. And the EOC can stay on the 1st floor. We could add more solar power. Kitchen gets bigger. Outside patio gets bigger. We have no accessibility in the building right now. You can't get a wheelchair in the front door. We don't have accessible bathrooms, those type of things. So we obviously would do that, and we would include an elevator from the 1st to 2nd floor only for customers coming in that need to go to the classrooms to the 2nd floor and so on. We're really light on the decon areas in the fire hall, places to do laundry and clean up after calls and so on. And again, we're trying to avoid our firefighters from bringing that sit home. Some of you guys were marveled at my architectural design here. So basically, just to try to keep it simple, this is what it would look like. We'd square that off. Well, they'd be a lot more architecturally pleasing. We'll have some design put into it. We may add windows to it and a dormer to it and a few other things, but essentially it builds that up. Yeah, and if you look at the height, it would be lower than that steel tower you see in the back, but higher than the wood tower that's right in front of it. That steel tower, by the way, is 50 feet. We had a variance when we built that in 1998. It was the tallest building in Comox at the time. So, yeah. 5 bedrooms upstairs instead of the 1 right now. We currently have 1 up there that we use for our work experience program. The acronym is WEB. And what happens there is we typically will have young trained firefighters from bigger cities, Lower Mainland and so on, come and live at our fire hall for 100 days. They sleep there for free. Work for free and get experience, and after their 100 days they go back to their own communities and try to get full-time work. So the proposal here is to upgrade to 5 bedrooms up there. We could use 1 or 2 for a work experience program, 3 or 4 for young firefighters looking for affordable places to stay. They would get a very affordable rent for being on duty at night, so we would have a much more improved response at nighttime. Currently, your fire department is set up that we have a great daytime response. We have staff there during the day. If we have a call between, say, 7:30 in the morning, 9 o'clock at night, our response is usually within 2 minutes of the door of the fire hall. After, say, 10 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, till the 7:30 in the morning, we're 10 to 15 minutes to respond at the door because we all have to come from home. So this is going to take that time down to pretty much as a full-time fire department would. It's going to save lives. It's going to reduce property damage. It's going to be, it's hard to put a dollar figure on that, but it's going to be huge for us. And by the way, we get a call every night for sure. It's pretty much every night we're out on a call. As I mentioned, that'd be one of the biggest benefits. Currently, some of our young members move out of the community because they just simply can't afford to live here. So having 5 bedrooms would also position us well in the future if we do go full time. So 40 years down the road, we may have 24-hour staffing, and then we already have those bedrooms built in. The main classroom would stay much the same as you see right now. In fact, the whole main floor pretty much stays the same with a few adjustments. Second floor would be boardrooms. These boardrooms would be have an air wall between them, so you could have one big classroom or 2 smaller classrooms. Emergency Operations Center on the first floor, as I mentioned. It ties in good with the Emergency Operations Center because we have backup power at the fire hall today, and that generator, we're doing some assessments on it right now, but we believe it'll be adequate for the new build. And we'll have great food facility there and plenty of washrooms and so on, which is all stuff that EOC needs. We have many other groups use the fire station, nonprofit groups. As you may know, it's pretty much busy 5 nights a week. There's groups in there doing different things. We offer lots of public training too. So I don't know, I guess I could recap this a little bit, but first floor, again, much the same. Second floor, offices, bathrooms, boardrooms, a lunchroom up there. Third floor would be 5 15 by 20 square feet of space. So think of a hotel room is what we're kind of designing up here. Each room would have a a tub shower, a microwave, mini fridge, TV, workstation in there. So they'd have comfortable space on their own, but there'd also be a common space for cooking, common living area and so on. So try to make it as comfortable as possible. And truck bays, again, would see a little bit of an improvement. Our firefighters deserve a modern facility. We've done a great job with our equipment and our training, everything else. Now it's time to upgrade the equipment. You can see how large our group is there, but the slide also indicates we're missing 20 people from that shot, right? So very, very full. How do we do this? We tear down the existing wood frame section, reuse what we can, rebuild in the same footprint, add an additional kitchen off to the side. Staff would relocate in 2 of the truck bays for a period of 1 year during the rebuild. These would be temporary partitioned with 2x4 walls and so on to make little office spaces of them. And we'd also put a portable construction trailer outside for access to the public. So it'd be signage up there saying public access is here for coming in for your permits or fire prevention stuff and so on. We'd add a shipping container to the west side of the building for storage. And then we'd have portable washrooms out there and showers. We're going to end up having to go to the rec center or other places for showers in the meantime. But we don't know. We've toyed with this for a while. How else to do this? I mean, to almost impossible. I mean, ideally, if you could build a new fire station somewhere else and just move across the street or something like that, it would be simple but very expensive. So staff is willing to be uncomfortable during the project, knowing that be greatly improved. Still in the early stages of this, we're looking to go into design drawings in the next week or 2 or 3. We're using a calculation right now of $600 a square foot. We've talked to a couple well-known local contractors that say that we're in the right ballpark with these numbers. Keeping in mind that 3 of the rooms in this fire station are fairly large, so they don't have a lot of fixtures in them. They don't have a lot of anything in them. Big classrooms and so on. A modest design. We don't need things really fancy. If you've been in the fire station, you know that it's pretty modest. And a third of the project is paid for by the Comox Fire Protection District, who's our partner in the fire service. So just some quick numbers: 6 million, third to the Fire Protection District. When I say we would talk with staff, myself and Jordan and others, talked about the ACC contribution for future citizens could be as much as 25% of this project, which is 1.5 million. Oops, sorry about that. Thought I turned that off, but yeah, that was supposed to happen 5 minutes ago, but anyhow, that would have to be funded obviously in front, but that's money we could get back. And then looking at this as a 40-year project, if we were to finance this, say over 20 to 25 years, we could use the rest of that timeline to build a nest egg for the next fire hall in 40 years. So rather be in this situation we're in right now where we don't have money in the bank, we could start doing asset management so we could actually have money available. One of the suggestions was possibly 40 or affordable housing contribution from our affordable housing fund, seeing as we're putting 5 suites upstairs that they could maybe we contribute 250. Sale of the old fire station, which is owned by Town of Comox Fire Protection District. We had that torn down last year. It's just a vacant lot right now. It would need rezoning, which fits in well with the OCP that's coming up. But we might see $500,000 in revenue there if we wanted to put that toward this project. Mortgage payments, these are very vague and ballpark figures, but about 230 annually, $33 a household, 2.1% tax increase. So currently, my job will be try to keep that to that level or even do it cheaper if we can. We talked about the suites upstairs. We would probably charge those firefighters rent up to $1,500 a month, but we're going to pay them about $1,500 a month to stand by. So the rent would zero out, but it would show revenue of $50,000 to $70,000 a year. That could be a mortgage helper. And the reason for charging them and zeroing it out is there's several reasons for that. But if we ever had a situation where a firefighter, we had a falling out with one and we wanted them out of the space, we just quit paying them. And then they have to either pay rent or move. So the rest of that's redundant. That's pretty much all been said already. Sorry about that. So when would we do this? And I've got here the time is now. We're long overdue. As I said, we're 47 years. We're busting at the seams. Our next large fire engine's not till 2030, so another 5-6 years from now, and that'll be an expensive endeavor, probably $2 million in that neighborhood. We desperately need to address the lack of showers, health and safety issue, the residential component. Again, the showers is certainly a big deal. And if we were to build it next year, I would probably stick around. As you might know, I'm getting old and I should probably retire, but I would stay on another year and see this project through to the end. But I can't wait for too many more years because obviously I need to be able to get on with things. But so I'm looking at maybe a year from now, tear down next April, rebuild during the summer months, lock up September, October, and then completion near the end of the year, if all goes well. This meets all the sections of your strategic plan, and that's it. I'd encourage you all to come and visit the fire station, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Chief Schreiner. And while you're in front of us, we just really want to say thank you for the service. We know you've been at a fire already today, so.
Yeah, we had a big fire already today and practice last night till 10. And I like to sidebar a little bit. So I was a bit taken back last night. The fire department surprised me. Yesterday was my 25th year as your fire chief. So they brought out a cake and sang and kind of had me a bit flustered.
Well, thank
But it
you.
also showed
and
how
congratulations
yeah.
on your 25 years as chief. So thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. That's a really nice preliminary plan. It has a lot of thought to it with the rooms. And
Yeah, as I mentioned, we've been working on this for several years. We got a lot of good thinkers up there, and like we've done with our fire trucks and everything else, we try to deliver something that's well thought out, doable.
Perfect. It shows. We have a question from Councillor Haslett.
Thanks very much, Chief, and again, congrats on 25 years. You talked a little bit about the 3 bays and not needing to go any bigger. Lead expansion kind of going on for the next 40 years or so. With changing regulations and that coming down from the province and the potential for buildings to get higher, do you anticipate that if you had to purchase another truck or a different truck, that you wouldn't have to expand the base? You have sufficient space in there to be able to reach higher buildings?
Right, through the chair to the counselor, yes, the truck we just purchased last year is a 110-foot aerial. I think it is the tallest one in the Comox Valley, maybe the military's might be a little bit taller, so that truck should do us for several years. We have 3 drive-through bays, which will hold up to 6 apparatus in there. We have the aerial truck and then 2 other large engines. If we get to a point where we need more equipment like that, we probably need another fire station somewhere else, because we're gonna have a density node somewhere else, Point Homes or, somewhere where we got a higher density. So that's usually what happens, is there's no sense putting 10 fire trucks in one building. You keep it down to 4 or 5 and then go on to another fire station. So I'm pretty confident that we can stay with the truck bays for the next 40 years. Needs a new roof, but other than that.
And then just a question regarding the downtime during construction if this moves forward. Would there be, I don't really know how much those rooms upstairs at the rec center are used. Has there been any conversation?
We've already had conversations with Ted for several issues, washroom facility, showers, and to book a classroom 2 nights a week, one of those upstairs rooms. So that's all in the works. And if that doesn't work, we have availability of the school behind us to get a classroom 1 or 2 nights a week. So we've looked into those things. So we should be able to keep those bases covered. I mean, we know we got to keep operating. It'd be nice to take a year off, but that's not going to happen.
Okay, we have Counselor Kerr.
Thanks for the presentation, Chief. Really like the concept and also like the strategies to keep the cost down for taxpayers. The concept of maybe selling off the old fire station Gladstone property makes a lot of sense to me, especially because it's half or a third owned by the fire protection district anyway, and there's the funds would be going towards the affordable housing above the station, so that's great. Maybe I'm not so set on the funds from the affordable housing contribution policy that we collect from developers, but maybe we can have a discussion about that in the future. I do have a question for staff though. Wondering, I'm just looking at examples, like there's a library in Saanich that was rebuilt and they put affordable housing units above it and got funds from BC Housing for that, which offset part of the cost of the library. Wondering if there's a way we could explore BC Housing funding, since we are putting affordable units above municipal facility.
Through to CEO Wall.
Chief Schreiner might know better than I do, but I would imagine that if we are limiting the use of those suites to only firefighters, we're probably not going to be eligible for any BC Housing funding. I think you might have to get into a 4th story and additional units up there to get into that type of funding. However, our own internal funding could be used that way.
Yeah, and I certainly concur with that. I've done some inquiries to that, and there doesn't seem to be much grants available for a specific use like this for firefighters only. Going a 4th floor is something we've discussed, but then having a mixed use up there, it could be complicated because of the nature of our business. We do live fire training in the backyard, auto extrication. We work long hours. It could be uncomfortable, and the footprint of the site is not very big. Parking could be an issue and so on. So.
Just a question over to staff on the financing. If the motions as they are, there's the 3 this evening, get approved, does that approve the 6 million spending, or does it approve for the plan to get basically finalized and come back to council, which is how I read through that?
That's correct. It's to approve the next step to be done. It'll need to come back to council for final approval before we move forward. And just so you're aware, the financial implications are with the town borrowing the 4 million. So anything else that you use to offset the cost could reduce the end charge to taxpayers. So the $33 per representative household is with the full 4 million borrowed, 2 million contributed by the fire protection district.
Okay, so that $33 was based on 4 million, not 1.5 million. Okay, good. Well, council got that. Any other questions or comments before we go through the staff recommendation or for Chief Schreiner? Okay, thank you again so much and congratulations.
And thank you. And again, I welcome you all to come up and visit. Walking through there and getting a feel for it, even much more important.
Perfect. We'll be discussing that shortly here. So the first item is that council direct administration to develop a financial plan for the replacement of the existing fire station offices with implementation beginning in early 2026.
Move.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on motion? I guess my only question would be, is there a reason that planning would start in early 2026 versus as soon as possible as far as getting?
Sorry, the motion would be that we're going to start the planning now
Okay.
with the idea that the construction implementation or construction would begin in 2026.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any questions on number 1? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. And the second item is that a council tour of the fire station be organized. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on that? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously, and that will be in the near future. Number 3, that council add fire station replacement to the strategic plan under community connections and wellness and public safety. If I can get a motion for 3.
Sorry.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments to that being added to the strategic plan? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you again to Chief Schreider and to CAO Wall for the presentation. We're now on page 210. We have the disposal of asset 2009, the Toro Grandmaster 4000, that the sale, not sure I said that properly, that the sale of the 2009 Toro Grandmaster 4000D to the Comox Golf Club for the price of $8,000 be approved. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Two room. What I call it. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes unanimously. I'm not a car person. Or yeah, fine. There are no notices of motion, no correspondence, no late items. We'll just do reports from council. So this would just be on any items that you want to educate council on, not necessarily the different meetings and events attended. We'll start with Councillor Blacklock.
Just one quick announcement with respect to the Comox Valley Substance Use Strategy Collaborative. There is a planned public awareness event that the coalition is not going to be involved with, but I believe is still moving forward with planning. And the idea is that event is in process for either June 3rd or June 4th. So that's just a heads up date that there will be a public event around substance use in the Comox Valley that evening. One of those 2 evenings.
Thank you for the update on the date. Councillor Swift.
Thank you. I attended the regular Philburg board meeting and also the Nautical Days meeting. And I'd like to say that the Nautical Days meeting with the Philburg people, it went really well, and there's a real synergy there. So it's looking really positive for moving forward. They're working really well together as a team and sharing costs and things. So it's really exciting. The other thing is on April 19th, it's the Easter weekend. Philburg will be conducting their regular Easter event, and it's by donation, which is great. So it's, free to families if they would like to come, and the regular scavenger hunt and hot dogs and crafts and things. So it's a great event. Hopefully the weather will be good. And then you probably saw in our correspondence that the Philburg has been granted or designated as a level 1 arboretum, which was really exciting for them. And it's only one of 2 on Vancouver Island. So I'm not exactly sure what the implications of that are, but it's an honor that they were seeking. So that was good news all around.
Thanks, Counselor Swift. Counselor Haslett.
Attended the Kids Sport Cup last weekend with CAO Wall and Councillor Grant. Councillor Grant did his best job to ensure a win for Comox as a referee. So thank you very much for that. Missing calls and bending over to pick pucks up. It was really quite impressive. And then another police meeting along with Councillor Kerr and Councillor Swift. Lots going on there. Meetings are at the last Wednesday of every month in council chambers.
At 4 p.m. 4 p.m. Perfect. Thank you, Counselor Kerr, Counselor Grant, Counselor Mayer, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick update from the Comox Strathcona Waste Management meeting that we had last week. So this is a shared board between the Campbell River Regional District area and municipalities and the Comox Valley area. So there's an agreement that this group has with Recycle BC that ended in 2024, and there was a necessity to renew the agreement by April 16th, so a couple of weeks from now. Every municipality in BC kind of got a very short notice sign here note from Recycle BC, and with no opportunity to negotiate the terms, sign it or there's no agreement and no funding. So it's good in some ways because the agreement has a 10% increase in some funding for some of the recycling operations, and they continue to fund the recycling depots. However, and this is the issue for our municipality, it's only a 10% increase for things like curbside pickup. And we know that based on our new curbside pickup process, some municipalities across the province have seen like an 85% increase in cost, and they're only getting a 10% increase in funding. So I'm not sure what our numbers are exactly, but I just wanted to flag this and bring this to this group's attention. And maybe that's something for staff to just see, is there any financial implications if the 10% increase doesn't equal the 85% cost? Does that mean, what does that mean for our taxpayers? So yeah, just thought I'd bring that up, and there's more information in the Waste Management Committee's agenda minutes from last week, or I'm happy to chat with anyone offline. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor Grant. Counselor Grant did just what Counselor Kerr did. Counselor Mayer.
The museum is going into visioning and strategic planning over the next 2 Saturdays. So if anybody has anything that they would like me to bring regarding a vision for what the future of the Comox Museum and Archives could be, please don't hesitate to reach out. If you'd like to participate, that can be arranged. And with the Pearl Ellis Art Gallery, Pearl Ellis's 100th birthday celebration will be on April 12th. And there will be an actual celebration at the gallery. So if that's of interest, please mark your calendars.
Thank you. I have nothing to report previous, but I just want to note that the Comox Valley Chamber of Commerce AGM is coming up on Wednesday, April 23rd at 5:30 at 40 knots. So anyone interested in registering for that, that is our chamber's AGM. And we also have our Comox Business Improvement Association AGM coming up. I believe the day is May 13th. They moved it May 12th at 5:30. So Monday, May 12th for the BIA AGM. So I just wanted to get you guys to save the dates for those. And that is all I have to report. Do we have any questions from the public this evening? Okay, head on up to the mic there and just wait till it goes red. Well,
Just wonder if there's any update on the Merville proposal to which they came forth a while ago regarding the Mac Lang House, and I guess they had to communicate with the Attorney General's office, or perhaps we did that. I just wonder if there's any information following that.
Yeah, I've seen some recent emails, but I'll go to CAO Wall to report back on where that is.
Yeah, we've spoken with the Attorney General's office. Well, they haven't endorsed the idea. They haven't rejected it either. The Merville Recreation Association, Community Association is slated to get back to us hopefully by the end of next week to understand what the costs are going to be. And then importantly, we also need to know what the timeline is going to be. The Attorney General's office has been very clear with us that this project needs to be done as soon as we have the ARC permitting, which we now have. So we need to get an understanding if this is going to happen, what sort of permits are going to be required in order to do so and what that timeline is going to be. At that point, we can share it with the Attorney General's office and find out their sort of thoughts.
Has the Merville Rec Association contacted us back on this at all, or?
The last update I got from them was just a few days ago saying that they should have costs next week, and I followed up saying that's great. We also need an understanding of what the timeline will be. So hopefully we hear back from them soon. If not, we are continuing with our plans to move ahead as we would have otherwise. You know, the hope is that the building can be saved and they can move it, and that would be fantastic. But the reality is that the timeline is tight, and hopefully they can get the information required to satisfy the Attorney General's office.
Has the Attorney General's office indicated the timeline, how much time is available before it has to be done?
Yes, we have basically 1 year from the time that we start doing the project, which will be in a couple months. So it's not a lot. We may be able to get an extension, but the Attorney General's office hasn't indicated support for this change. They just haven't told us we can't do it. So the Attorney General's office, I think, is probably looking at this going, we're not going to weigh in until you bring us a full, a fully fleshed out proposal, and then we'll give our thoughts.
Thank you for that. And any other further questions? Okay, so we will move for termination at 6:03. Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes.